The stars in the VTHA corridor did not move. Nothing moved there. That region of space had been dead and empty for a very long time, and every species in the galactic conclave knew it. There was nothing of value in the corridor, no rare minerals, no habitable planets, no worthwhile trade routes. Conclave patrol ships passed through once every few weeks, simply to confirm it remained empty. They never stayed long. There was no reason to. So when the ISV Pale Meridian appeared at the edge of the corridor 3 days ago, the Conclave patrol that spotted it barely reacted. The ship was registered in their database as a human civilian freighter, an old model with low engine output, licensed for minor cargo runs along approved trade routes. Its hull was dented and patched in several places. Its signal was weak. It looked like every other worn-out human vessel drifting along the outer edges of conclave space, carrying low-value goods and causing no trouble. The patrol logged it, marked it as a non-threat, and moved on. That was their first mistake. It would not be their last. Inside the Pale Meridian, Commander Yoel Oren sat in a chair older than most of her crew. She held a cup of coffee in both hands and stared at the main screen before her. The display showed the corridor outside, stars, darkness, and the slow drift of nothing. She had been watching it for 3 days. She did not look tired. She did not look bored. She looked like someone thinking very carefully about something, and had been for a long time. She was a small woman, quiet by nature, with short dark hair and sharp, observant eyes that missed very little. The crew of the Pale Meridian respected her deeply, not because she gave loud speeches or made dramatic decisions, but because she never made a wrong one. Every decision she made came after long, silent thought. And when she spoke, it was always worth hearing. "Ares," she said softly. The ship's AI responded through the speakers above her. Its voice was calm and even, with the faintest trace of dry humor beneath its tone. "Still watching, Commander. Nothing has changed in the last 4 minutes, which means nothing has changed in the last 3 days. The convoy remains on schedule. It will enter the corridor in approximately 11 hours. Oren took a slow sip of her coffee. "Good. You don't sound excited." "I'm not," she replied. "Excited people make noise. We don't make noise." Ares did not respond. It was a fair point. The Galactic Conclave was not a cruel organization by nature. It was simply old. It had been founded over 400 years ago by the earliest spacefaring species, the V3I, the Colon, and the Senator. In that time, it had grown large, comfortable, and certain of its own authority. The Conclave decided which species were ready to join the wider galaxy, which needed more time, and which were not worth consideration at all. Humanity fell firmly into the last category. Humans had been discovered 60 years ago, late arrivals to the interstellar stage. They still relied on early faster-than-light drives. They still argued among themselves over politics and resources. The Conclave had evaluated them and assigned a Class 3 emerging species rating. Class 3 meant simple things. Not dangerous. Not useful. Not important. It meant humans were allowed to trade only along the outer edges of Conclave space. It meant their ships could pass through limited, approved corridors. It meant their ambassadors could attend Conclave meetings, but only in the back rows, without a vote. In simple terms, the Conclave did not take humanity seriously. It never had. And it had no intention of starting. For 60 years, human ambassadors stood before the High Chamber, asking for equal status. For 60 years, they received polite refusals. They were told they were too young, too emotional, too primitive. For 60 years, they watched other species, those with stronger economies, more advanced weapons, and longer histories, sit at the center table, while humanity remained on the edge, given nothing. Most species would have given up after a decade or two. Humans were not most species. The convoy now approaching the VTHA corridor carried a treaty. Not just any treaty, the Century Binding. It was a conclave document, quietly developed over the past 4 years by a committee of senior diplomats. Once signed by the required majority, it would formally restrict human expansion into deep space for the next 100 years. It would close off key trade corridors. It would limit human ship production. It would block any future applications for full conclave membership, until a review process that the treaty itself made nearly impossible to pass. In simple terms, it was designed to ensure humanity stayed small, and stayed quiet. For a century. The conclave had not informed humanity. Why would they? Humans had no vote. Humans had no voice. Humans were Class 3. This was an internal matter. What the conclave did not know, what they could not have imagined, was that humanity had known about the Century Binding for 2 years. Every meeting where it had been discussed had been recorded. Every draft that was written had been read. Every vote count had been tracked. Humanity had known what was coming long before the ink was dry. And they had been preparing. Ares spoke again after a long silence. "Commander, the Conclave Patrol has left the corridor. We are alone." "Run the check again," Orin said. "Passive sensors only. No active scans. Keep all systems in sleep mode except core processing and life support. To anyone observing us right now, we are a dead ship drifting." "To anyone observing us," Ares repeated. "But they are not observing," Orin said calmly. "They haven't looked closely at a human ship in 40 years. She set her coffee down and leaned slightly forward in her chair. "Let's make sure the convoy feels comfortable coming in. Do not touch anything until I give the order." "Understood." Around her, the crew moved quietly, checking small displays, adjusting minor systems, speaking in low voices. There was no fear in the room. There was focus. A calm born not from ignorance of danger, but from preparation so deep and complete that every possible outcome had already been considered, measured, and accounted for. 11 hours later, the first lights of the Conclave diplomatic convoy appeared at the far edge of the VTHA corridor. Chapter 2, Immobilizing the Convoy. Commander Orin watched them approach. She did not move. She did not speak. She waited until all 7 ships were fully inside the corridor. Then she looked toward Ares' camera above the main display and said 2 words. "Begin." The lead ship of the Conclave convoy was called the Eternal Accord. It was a large vessel, broad, silver, and built in the traditional conclave style, designed to look important. Its bridge spanned 3 levels, lined with tall, curved displays and staffed by officers from 4 different species. At the center of it all, seated in a slightly elevated command chair, was Admiral Sether. He was Vorai. His species had been traveling the stars since long before humanity had developed written language. Tall and gray-skinned, with 4 narrow eyes that moved independently, he was always watching multiple parts of the room at once. He wore his rank with the effortless confidence of someone who had never truly been challenged. He had been chosen to escort the century binding to the conclave signing chamber. Not because he was the greatest military strategist, though he believed he was, but because he was trusted. Trusted to be careful. Trusted to protect the treaty. Trusted, above all, not to be surprised. He looked out at the corridor surrounding his convoy and saw nothing. Just empty space. Just distant stars. He allowed himself a brief moment of boredom. That was his first mistake. It began without warning. One moment, everything aboard the Eternal Accord was functioning perfectly. The next moment, nothing was. The propulsion system failed first. Not with an explosion. Not with visible damage. It simply stopped responding. The engines were still running. Power was still flowing. Nothing appeared broken. The ship just did not move. The helm officer tapped his controls, stared at his display, and spoke in a confused voice. He did not understand what was happening. Then the weapon system shut down. Then long-range communications. Then the sensor array. Not completely blind, but reduced to a narrow, localized view. It was like going from seeing an entire ocean to seeing only a small puddle. The same thing happened to all 7 ships at once. The convoy, which had been moving in perfect formation, slowly came to a complete stop. 7 massive vessels. Full of highly trained conclave officers. Equipped with the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Floating helplessly in a dead corridor. Unable to do anything. Admiral Sether rose from his chair. Report. Reports came in from every station at once. None of them matched. Because nothing was actually wrong. Not in any way they could understand. Systems were operational. Power levels were stable. All equipment was technically functional. And yet, the ships were being held in place. Disabled by something that left no trace on any instrument. Scan for the source, Sether ordered. His science officer, a young Kaelin named Tyrath, initiated multiple scans. She ran them once. Then again. Then a third time. Slowly, she looked up. Her voice was controlled, but uncertain. Admiral, I cannot find a source. There is no detectable emission. No energy field. No wave pattern. Whatever is doing this, it is not visible on any spectrum. All 4 of Sether's eyes turned to face the same direction at once. Something his species only did when truly alarmed. That is not possible. I know, Tyrath replied quietly. And yet, on the main display, still visible in the near distance, drifting silently, doing absolutely nothing. Was the ISV Pale Meridian. Old. Damaged. Harmless. Or so it seemed. According to every instrument they had, nothing was wrong. Aboard the Pale Meridian, Ares spoke in a quiet, satisfied tone. All 7 convoy vessels are immobilized. Long-range communications are blocked. Weapon systems are locked. They are currently running their 3rd diagnostic cycle. They will not find anything. Commander Oren was already moving toward the back of the bridge. How long do we have before they attempt short-range communication with the nearest conclave relay? Short-range communications are also blocked. They are not aware of that yet. They will realize it in approximately 8 minutes. We need 6. She turned to the 2 small teams waiting by the corridor door. 12 people in total. Dressed in plain, unmarked clothing. Go. The teams moved. Fast. Silent. 2 compact shuttles launched from the Pale Meridian, not from the main docking port, but from a concealed secondary bay hidden beneath a patched section of the hull, indistinguishable from old damage. The shuttles crossed the distance to the nearest convoy ship in under 2 minutes. They docked at a maintenance port located along the lower hull, an emergency access point standard on all conclave vessels. Humanity had studied those designs for 2 years. They knew everything. Every corridor. Every door. Every system. The data cores containing the century-binding treaty were stored in a secured chamber on the middle deck of the Eternal Accord. It took the team 4 minutes to reach it. 1 minute to gain access. 40 seconds to complete their work. They did not steal the treaty. That would have been noticed immediately. Instead, they made changes. Small. Precise. Critical. Language that permanently restricted humanity was quietly replaced. Clauses blocking human membership were softened into review processes that could actually be passed. Restrictions on ship production were removed entirely. When the treaty would eventually be printed and signed in the conclave chamber, it would appear almost identical. Almost. Except for the parts that mattered most. The teams returned to the Pale Meridian in 5 minutes and 40 seconds. Ares noted this with approval. Teams recovered. All systems returning to sleep mode. Shall I release the convoy? Give it 1 more minute, Oren said, sitting back down and picking up her coffee. She waited. She drank. Then. Release them. The jamming field, a human-designed system that had taken 11 years to perfect and produced no detectable signal on any known spectrum, shut down as silently as it had activated. Across all conclave ships, systems came back online one by one. Like waking from a dream. The Pale Meridian ignited its visible thrusters. Slowly. Casually. It turned in a wide, unhurried arc and began drifting away toward the nearest approved human trade route. It looked like a freighter leaving after a routine stop. Completely harmless. Chapter 3, The Confrontation. On the Eternal Accord, Admiral Setha stood at the center of his bridge, trying to make sense of what had just occurred. His systems were operational. His ships were intact. Nothing had been damaged. Nothing had been stolen. The data cores were checked immediately. Confirmed intact. And yet, for 9 minutes and 12 seconds, his entire convoy had been completely helpless. 9 minutes in which anything could have been done to them. And they would have been unable to stop it. He stared at the Pale Meridian as it drifted away. Do we have anything on that ship? Tyrath pulled up the file. Registered human civilian freighter. Class 3 species trade license. Cargo manifest lists agricultural equipment. No registered weapons. No military classification. It has been in the database for 12 years. Scan it. She did. Standard civilian power output. Old engine model. Patched hull. No anomalies. Setha remained silent for a long moment. Every rational part of his mind told him the same thing. The human ship was not responsible. His instruments said so. His database said so. Every piece of evidence said so. A civilian freighter from a Class 3 species could not generate a jamming field that left no trace on any conclave sensor array. It was impossible. He repeated that to himself. More than once. Then he made a decision. Not from logic. But from anger. The specific anger of someone powerful who had just been made to feel small. Without understanding how. He opened a channel to the other ships. I want that human vessel intercepted, boarded, and brought to a full stop. We will search it. We will question its crew. And if I find anything at all, I will make an example of them. 6 captains confirmed the order. 12 warships broke formation and moved toward the Pale Meridian. Ares tracked them. Calculated their trajectories. Their speed. Their time to arrival. Then it said something it had not said in 3 days. With the faintest trace of what, in a human, might be called anticipation. "Commander, they're coming for us." Orin looked at the screen. 12 Conclave warships. She watched them in silence. Then, just once, she smiled. Good. The warships formed a wide circle around the pale meridian. It took 20 minutes to complete the maneuver. They moved with the precision of a fleet accustomed to dominance, cutting off escape routes, establishing control through positioning alone. Each warship was larger than the pale meridian. Most were 3 times its size. They were armed with long-range rail systems, energy lances, and missile banks capable of shattering small moons. Their hulls were reinforced with Vetherite alloy. Their crews were elite. By every measurable standard. This was overwhelming force. Sent to stop a single, aging civilian freighter. Admiral Sether did not personally approach. He remained aboard the Eternal Accord, observing through long-range feeds. But he transmitted a message. Broadcast across an open channel, loud enough for every ship in the corridor to hear. "Attention, human vessel. You are surrounded by Conclave military ships. You will power down your engines, open your docking ports, and submit to inspection. Any resistance will be treated as an act of aggression against the Galactic Conclave. Respond and comply." The message was firm. Professional. Absolute. The voice of someone who had never been refused. The pale meridian did not respond. For 1 full minute. Then, Commander Orin's voice came through. Quiet. Clear. And completely calm. Message received. Give us a moment. Inside the pale meridian, the bridge fell silent. Orin stood in front of her chair. Not sitting. Standing. Hands at her sides. Eyes fixed on the screen displaying the 12 Conclave warships encircling them. She had known this moment would come. She had imagined it countless times. In countless ways. Over many years. She had discussed it with her crew. With the engineers who built the ship. With the officials and quiet officers on Earth who had first written Project Pale Light onto paper 30 years ago. They had all told her the same thing. When this moment comes, be certain. Because once it happens, there is no going back. The galaxy will see what it sees. And it cannot unsee it. She glanced around the bridge. Her crew looked back. Not afraid. Ready. Orin sat down. "Ares," she said quietly, "it's time." Confirming authorization, Ares replied. "Commander Yoel Orin. Pale light clearance confirmed. Authorization accepted." A brief pause. "Ready when you are." Orin looked at the 12 warships on the screen. For a single moment. She thought of every human ambassador who had stood before the Conclave High Chamber and been dismissed. She thought of the Class 3 designation. She thought of the century-binding treaty. Sitting safely in its data cores. Designed to keep humanity small, quiet, and irrelevant for another 100 years. Then, she let all of it go. Uncloak. What happened next took 4 seconds. Every Conclave officer who witnessed it would remember those 4 seconds for the rest of their lives. Chapter 4, Revealing the Hidden Fleet. First, the pale meridian changed. Its outer hull, old, dented, patched, began to peel away. Large sections detached and drifted outward, released magnetically into space. What remained underneath was not a freighter. It was sleek, dark, engineered with long, clean lines. Weapon arrays, previously hidden, unfolded into view. Its engine ports were far larger than any civilian vessel should possess. Its hull was composed of a material unknown to Conclave senses, unclassified, unreadable. It was not enormous. It did not need to be. It was unmistakably a warship. A warship that had been wearing a freighter as a disguise. The Conclave officers had barely 2 seconds to process this. Before the rest appeared. To the left of the pale meridian. Space distorted. Subtly. Like air shimmering above heated ground. And then, another ship emerged. Larger. Darker. Moving slowly, as if it had been waiting there the entire time. Then another, to the right. One above. 2 below the convoy. 3 more at the far end of the corridor, already aligned, engines active, facing inward. And 1 more. Very close to the Eternal Accord. Close enough that proximity alarms should have been screaming. Except, that ship had been there for 2 days. Undetected. 9 additional vessels. 10 in total. Including the pale meridian. They had been there the entire time. The corridor, long believed to be empty, dead space, was suddenly filled with human warships. They varied in size and shape, but they shared a common design. Dark, minimal, built for function, not appearance. No markings, no identifiers, nothing that matched any record in the Conclave database. Because they had never been recorded. Because no one had known they existed. On the bridge of the Eternal Accord. Silence. Admiral Sether stared at the screen. All four of his eyes had aligned again. A rare sign of genuine shock. Tyrath, his science officer, had stopped mid-command. Frozen. The communications officer still held an open channel, but had forgotten to speak. Finally, Sether found his voice. How? It was not truly a question. More a reflex. The sound someone makes when reality breaks unexpectedly. Tyrath answered. Because it was her duty to answer. Her voice was quiet. Careful. Measured. The cloaking technology they are using does not match any known system in our records. There is no emission. No phase variance. No gravitational distortion detectable on any instrument. These ships were not there. And now they are. She paused. Then added. There are 10 of them. We have 12. But they are positioned. She stopped again. Looked at the tactical display. They are positioned so that any firing solution we take crosses the path of at least 2 of our own ships. Every angle. All 12 of us. Sether said nothing. Because there was nothing to say. He was surrounded. Not the way he had surrounded the Pale Meridian. Casually. Confidently. Like a predator closing in on something weaker. No. This was different. This was a trap. One planned far in advance. One executed with absolute precision. The corridor had been chosen. The timing had been chosen. The positions. Calculated perfectly. He had let 12 warships into a situation that only revealed itself as a trap. After it had already closed. The open channel crackled. Commander Oren's voice returned. Still calm. Still steady. No triumph. No theatrics. Just a human voice. Speaking plainly across a very short distance. Admiral Sether, my name is Commander Yoel Oren. I represent the United Earth Strategic Command. A brief pause. We are not here to fight you. We have never wanted to fight you. I want to make that very clear. Another pause. But I think it's time we had an honest conversation, the kind that should have happened a long time ago. Her voice was steady. Not cold. Not angry. If you are willing to listen, we would like to talk. The channel remained open. The 10 human ships did not move. Their weapons stayed folded. Their engines remained at low power. They waited. On the Eternal Accord, Admiral Sether slowly lowered himself back into his chair. He stared at the screen. At 10 ships that, 20 minutes ago, had not existed in his understanding of the galaxy. He thought about the treaty secured in his data cores, bound for the signing chamber. He thought about 60 years of conclave decisions regarding humanity. He thought about every time the term Class 3 had been used. Like a door slammed shut. Ares' voice sounded only within the Pale Meridian. Quiet. Dry. Perfectly timed. They never updated their threat library to include us. A brief pause. An oversight on their part. Another. A very intentional one on ours. Oren did not smile. She simply waited. The corridor remained frozen in silence. 10 human warships. 12 conclave vessels. Facing one another in dead space. The galaxy, unknowingly, holding its breath. Chapter 5, Emergency Conclave Session. An emergency session of the Galactic Conclave High Chamber was called within 6 hours of the incident in the VTHA corridor. Normally, assembling a full session took days. But when Admiral Sether's compressed report reached the capital, 12 warships immobilized. 10 unknown human vessels uncloaked. A convoy rendered helpless for 9 minutes without a trace. The chamber filled quickly. The room itself was vast and circular, with seats arranged in concentric rings around a central floor. The oldest and most powerful species occupied the inner rings. Newer, smaller, or less influential species sat in the outer rings. There were no human seats. There never had been. Every seat was filled. At the center stood First Voice Thanu, an elderly Vorai leader, struggling to keep her voice steady as she summarized the situation. 10 human warships of unknown classification. Cloaking technology with no detectable signature. A jamming field that leaves no trace on any known instrument. Evidence suggesting these vessels were in position within the VTHA corridor for at least 72 hours prior to revealing themselves. Then, she slowed, carefully choosing her words. Initial analysis of the data cores from the Eternal Accord shows no missing files. No altered records. Nothing out of place. She paused. Because that was the most disturbing part. The chamber erupted. Voices overlapped. Arguments collided. Meanwhile, the Conclave Intelligence Division began its real work. Re-examining everything they thought they knew. Searching for what they had missed. The results came in fragments. Each one worse than the last. Human observation posts. Small. Passive. Nearly impossible to detect. 3 had already been discovered near Conclave border systems. Only found because analysts now knew exactly what to look for. They carried no weapons. They performed no active operations. They simply watched. And recorded. Estimates suggested they had been in place for 15 to 20 years. Then. A deep space relay network. Human-built. Quantum encrypted. Positioned far beyond standard patrol routes. It had likely been intercepting Conclave transmissions. Not military communications. Diplomatic ones. Every high chamber session. For decades. And then. The revelation that silenced the room. Human operatives. Not spies in the traditional sense. Not soldiers. Just people. Humans working within Conclave systems. Trade guilds. Logistics chains. Supply networks. Ordinary roles. Invisible roles. The kind no one monitors. Because no one expects anything from a Class 3 species. Some had spent years doing nothing but their jobs. Listening. Observing. Waiting. What they gathered. What they transmitted back. Had, over decades, built a near-complete picture of the Conclave's long-term plans. This was not luck. Humanity had not secretly built a fleet and hoped for the best. They had constructed an entire shadow infrastructure. Slow. Patient. Precise. Invisible. And they had done it because they knew exactly what the Conclave intended. Because they understood. They had no other choice. A council member from the inner ring. A heavyset Kalen named Orvith. Struck his console in anger. This is an act of war. A voice responded from the outer ring. Against whom? The chamber turned. The speaker was a young senator. Ire of the Sen species. One of the smaller members. One of those seated in the outer ring. Where the lighting was dimmer. And the seats were narrower. She rose slowly. Her voice calm. Direct. Against whom? She repeated. They surrounded a convoy carrying a treaty designed to close off their future, without even informing them, Aya said. They held 12 of our warships without damaging a single one, without harming a single crew member. They could have taken the treaty. They could have destroyed the convoy. They did neither. She looked directly at Orvith. They asked to talk. A brief pause. Which part of that is an act of war? The silence that followed was not agreement. But it was not immediate opposition either. 62 years earlier, a woman named Syrah Voss had stood in this same chamber. She had been Earth's senior diplomatic representative. A title with no voting power, no guaranteed voice. But that day, she had been granted the floor. She was tall, dark-eyed, and carried a stillness often mistaken for shyness. But it was not. It was control. She spoke for 8 minutes. Not about humanity's wars. Not about its failures. The Conclave already used those as justification. She spoke about resilience. About adaptation. About the human tendency to continue. Even when stopping would be easier. She spoke about humanity's desire to belong. To contribute to something larger. A galaxy that had refused to accept them. Her argument was calm. Clear. Dignified. When she finished. There was a pause. Then. Laughter. Not from everyone. But from enough. The kind of comfortable, dismissive laughter that comes from people who have already decided the answer. And find the question itself amusing. Syrah Voss did not react. She did not raise her voice. She did not show anger. She simply looked at them. In silence. For a long moment. Then she nodded once. Gathered her papers. And walked out. She returned to Earth. And she wrote a letter. It was addressed to a department responsible for deep space development. The letter was short. It proposed a classified program. Funded through layers of misdirection. Focused on long-term strategic capability. Not to conquer. Not to attack. To defend. To ensure that when the conclave finally chose to close the door permanently, humanity would have the power to say, no. She called it Project Pale Light. Sira Voss had been dead for 11 years. But her program lived on. Floating in the VTJ corridor. In the form of 10 silent warships. Weapons folded. Communications open. Back in the high chamber. The debate had stretched for 2 hours. And circled back on itself more than once. Intelligence reports continued to arrive. Each one expanding the scope of what had been discovered. A Vorai general argued for immediate military retaliation. Orvith supported him. 3 inner ring members pushed for caution. The outer ring mostly listened. Aya remained seated. Absorbing everything. Not the fear-driven arguments. But the facts. Observation posts. Listening networks. A fleet that could have destroyed. But did not. A jamming system that disabled. But did not harm. She stood again. This time, the chamber gave her the floor quickly. I have one question, she said. Just one. She looked around the chamber. At the leaders who had defined humanity's place for 60 years. If they have all of this. The ships. The network. Decades of our meetings recorded. And they still came to us asking to talk. She paused. Let the weight of it settle. What does that tell us about them? The chamber fell silent. Not the tense silence of argument. But the deeper silence of reflection. First voice Thanu looked at her. Then down at the table. Then spoke. Her voice quieter than usual. Older. It tells us. A pause. That we have been wrong about them. No one laughed. Chapter 6. The Diplomatic Offer. The negotiation did not take place in the conclave chamber. Not on a capital station. Not on neutral ground. It took place aboard the Pale Meridian. Now fully revealed. Dark. Precise. Unmistakably powerful. The location had been chosen deliberately. For 60 years, humanity had gone to the conclave. Sat in their halls. Spoke on their terms. Now, the conclave came to them. A small detail. But in diplomacy, small details matter. For representatives arrived. First voice Thanu. Admiral Setha. Orvith of the Kalan. And, at Thanu's quiet request, Senator Aya. Commander Oren met them at the docking port. No uniform. No insignia. Only simple, dark clothing. With her were 3 others. 2 crew members. And a quiet man introduced only as Dr. Fenn, carrying a slim case. She led them through the ship. The conclave delegation observed everything. Clean corridors. Unfamiliar systems. Crew members moving with quiet purpose. Not staring. Not avoiding. Oren offered no explanations. The ship spoke for itself. The briefing room was simple. A table. Chairs. A blank screen. Water. Nothing more. They Saturday. Oren began without accusation. No speeches. No history lessons. No list of grievances. She had chosen her first words carefully. Thank you for coming. Simple. Genuine. It surprised all of them. In different ways. We are not here to punish anyone, she continued. We are not here to make demands at the end of a weapon. If we wanted that, we had the opportunity 3 days ago, and chose not to take it. She looked around the table. We are here because we want a future that works for everyone. And we believe that future is possible. Admiral Setha, prepared for confrontation, found himself with nothing to resist. First voice Thanu spoke instead. You know about the century binding. We have known for 2 years, Oren replied. Then you know what we intended. Yes. A pause. You should also know, Oren continued, that the treaty has already been altered. The version in your data cores is no longer the one you wrote. Silence. We accessed it, she said plainly. We made changes. We did not steal it. We did not destroy it. We returned it. Fixed. Setha's jaw tightened. That was not your right. No, Oren said calmly. It wasn't. And you did not have the right to decide our future without telling us. Another pause. We are both outside the rules now, she said. The difference is. One of us had no other choice. Dr. Fenn opened his case. Inside. A single document. He placed it on the table. This, Oren said, is what we came to offer. It was called. The Open Charter. 41 pages. 8 years of work. Written, revised, debated, again and again. It did not destroy the conclave. It restructured it. No more class system. No more hierarchy. Every spacefaring species. One seat. One vote. Equal voice. Trade rebalanced. Restrictions removed. Smaller species given independence. A shared defense framework. Without forcing anyone to surrender sovereignty. A transition plan. Gradual. Structured. Realistic. Not a threat. Not an ultimatum. A plan. Vanu read in silence. Then looked up. You had 30 years to prepare this. We did. And this is what you chose to build. Oren nodded slightly. The weapons were necessary, she said quietly. But they were never the goal. She gestured to the document. This is. Vanu set the charter down. You said the treaty has changed. Yes. What does it say now? Dr. Fenn slid forward a single-page summary. The revised treaty. Removed restrictions on human expansion. Allowed future membership. Replaced impossible barriers with fair review. It no longer suppressed. It no longer controlled. It simply functioned. Setha spoke again. Not angry. Curious. Why? Why not reveal yourselves earlier? Why go through all of this? Oren answered simply. Because we did not want to fight. We tried for 60 years to walk through the front door. When it was about to be locked permanently, we found another way in. A pause. And even now, we are still trying to walk through that same door. We just needed you to open it. Aya spoke quietly. You already have support. Oren nodded. 4 species have signed. 2 mid-level powers. 2 smaller outer-ring species. All approached quietly. All given the truth. All agreed. We didn't come alone, Aya said. We haven't been alone for a long time, Oren replied. Chapter 7. A new era begins. The signing did not happen immediately. 3 weeks of negotiation followed. Debate. Resistance. Support. Some refused outright. Others signed early. In the end, enough agreed. The open charter was ratified. Quietly. Without spectacle. Humanity took its seat. Not at the edge. Not in the back. At the center. Equal. Months later, a junior intelligence analyst completed a full report on humanity. Detailed. Thorough. 40 pages long. The reviewing admiral wrote one final note. We had 100 years to understand them. We chose not to. We will not make that mistake again. The Pale Meridian was recommissioned. New markings. United Earth Strategic Command. And beside it, the emblem of the Open Charter Conclave. It became the official vessel of Earth's first High Ambassador, the daughter of Dr. Fenn, a diplomat inspired by Sira Voss. On its first arrival at the Conclave capital, Ares opened a channel, broadcast wide. It said only one thing. Next time. A pause. Scan the freighter. Across ships and stations. Those who had been in the VTHA corridor heard it. And felt something unfamiliar. Something between embarrassment and respect. Something that, in time, might become something better. The Pale Meridian docked. Engines cooling. And for the first time in a long while, the galaxy had something new to think about.